Learning objectives. Explain the active compounds of marijuana, particularly THC and CBD, and their effects on the human body and brain. Evaluate the therapeutic processes of marijuana and potential risks. Investigate the potential risks within mental health, specifically for anxiety, depression, psychosis. Classify various hallucinogens when we will specify the three: LSDs, classic psychedelics, dissociatives such as PCP and ketamine, and entheogens based on their effects and uses. We will also discuss the current research and some of the lack of consistency in research within the therapeutic applications of hallucinogens and mental health treatment, particularly for depression, PTSD, and addiction. We will also summarize potential risks associated with hallucinogen use, including psychological distress, flashbacks, and bad trips. History of marijuana goes back thousands and thousands of years, even 10,000 years in Stone Age, where cannabis leaves were used and their plant fibers were used to making pots. Within the earliest, in 2700 BC, Chinese Empire retained knowledge of the medicinal properties of cannabis through the pharmacist Emperor Nun, and it gradually spread throughout the Chinese and Asian culture, including India. It then reached later on to Middle Asia, Middle East, North Africa, and much later to the Western culture in the 19th century. Marijuana is broken down to two components: the psychoactive component and the non-psychoactive component. THC mimics such as we discussed in previous lecture, the neurotransmitters causing the effects such as euphoria, relaxation, and altered perception. The CBD, where we commonly see within products such as lotions and oils that can be used over the counter, have a non-psychoactive compound which interacts with the endocannabinoid system. It can decrease inflammation, help with anxiety, and anticonvulsant properties. It impacts the brain with modulation of the neurotransmitter release and influence mood, memory, and cognition. Methods of using marijuana and hash. During Indian century, the Indians ingested it through liquids and food form. They also were chewing the marijuana leaves. In U.S. culture, we know utilizing marijuana through smoking, such as joints and blunts, and also using water pipes such as bongs. Vaping came around within its new era using e-cigarettes. There's also a form of using dabbing, heating hash oil, or inhaling the vapor. Tolerance and dependence, such as every drug, there's variations and differentiation in research of the components that lead to tolerance and dependence. There are some trend within research within being more tolerant of higher doses over long periods of time. There's an ongoing debate on the physical dependence and the withdrawal and the impacts of the substance, such as sleep disturbance, nausea, irritability, restlessness following sensations of use. Therapeutic use of marijuana, anti-inflammatory components such as chronic pain relief, neuropathic pain reduction, neurological conditions such as epilepsy and multiple sclerosis. There's impacts on how it can help with that, of how it reduces the pain within the neurological conditions, mental health, relief of anxiety and PTSD, risk dependency and withdrawal, cognitive impairment, and the ethical issues within, especially with United States, of some states not legalizing the use of marijuana for medicinal uses. Marijuana and mental health makes evidence of how it increases anxiety while using it. However, it may exacerbate the symptoms for some when using it. So there's mixed reviews or mixed evidence with the impacts of anxiety. The effects on depression, there's short-term relief versus long-term relief, ongoing debate of the consistency of it being effective for medicinal uses and mental health. There are risks depending on the person and the impact of the use of marijuana on psychosis. And again, within the vulnerable population, because of cognitive stability, it impacts adolescents within being predisposed to mental health conditions. Behavioral effects. Again, we discuss the inconsistency of the impacts and effects on behavior, such as perception and relaxation and tranquility, sensory perceptions and heightened due to utilizing marijuana, sensitivity, reduction in pain, and also how it impairs motor coordination. There are heightened risks with any substance when it comes to the ability in cognition and the alertness with the utilizing the substance while operating a vehicle. Effects on sexual behavior. Some people discuss enhancement with sexual functioning. However, ongoing research is still in effects to the consistency of these findings. We discussed a little bit of the cognitive impairment, and their most common cognitive effect is short-term memory. And it can occur with lower doses or higher doses of the marijuana. Again, it definitely impacts the impairment of adolescents. And another common effect of cognitive effect is altered perception and of the time, like time is slowing down. There's an impact of how they remember things and which we're in experience time perception and their own perception of time, and their ability to be attentive and be able to concentrate on tasks. Research finds include great cognitive impairment with longer history of use, even after stopping it, worse performance in divided attention and verbal fluency measures with frequent use. Available research on persistent cognitive effects from long-term memory is equivocal. Long-term marijuana use is equivocal, There's the debate on the impacts of motivation and decreased sense of goals and difficulties concentrating. It's a differentiation if it's with the use of marijuana, without, or if it's a particular trait within the person, per se. And when it occurs, it's probably due to a combination of both pre-existing characteristics and some drugs effects. So that's where there's this dilemma of and debate if it's truly the impact of marijuana use. We're going to focus on 3 classifications of hallucinogens when it comes to the classic psychedelics was LSD, magic mushrooms as another form of classic hallucinogens, it alters perception and enhance sensory experiences. Dissociatives such as PCP and ketamine affects feelings of detachment, distorted perceptions of reality. Entheogens affects the spiritual experiences and altered state of consciousness. History, long history of hallucinogenic drugs, didn't get popular into the European American culture until the 1970s. It stemmed from a chemist, Albert Hofmann, in 1938, becoming aware of LSD, and he synthesized the compounds and found LSD through the fungus ergot. And within that, he accidentally experimented with and was exposed to LSD, which there was the findings of the hallucinogens. With those findings, became more public, but then they realized the impacts and the effects of LSD and hallucinogens, which caused a decline within the 1970s and 1980s, with findings like chromosomal damage, mental illness, suicide, homicide, and violence. MDMA, methylated amphetamines, became popular in the 1990s, was used more with the younger population. However, the adverse effects of brain damage and death created more decline. Within methylated amphetamines, it did not have such effects with visual hallucinations, but there were mild euphoria, along with more like openness and like being more feely and emotional. Ketamine had a shorter impact in between the height of PCP, and that emerged as a street drug in the 1970s, very popular around with the youth. And then the effects came about of the dangerous side effects around it with the youth and how it impacted their cognitive and physical ability, and it started to decrease over time as well. Therapeutic applications of hallucinogen is that it helps with reduction of symptoms and PTSD or depression. And there are psychedelics help with reduction in addiction and helping with recovery. However, there is a smaller sample size and further studies because of lack of consistent research. Adverse effects of serotonergic hallucinogens. Again, there was this prominent factor of chromosomal damage, but there is not enough research to say that LSD causes those particular damages. We definitely know that any substance can impact fetal damage, and that causes the impacts on the fetus and the infant child. One of the most prominent issues with hallucinogens is the hallucinations and the bad trips that can cause psychosis and traumatic experiences where there are long-term effects and flashbacks because of those bad trips. Risk associated with hallucinogens use is the psychological distress within the bad trips and the flashbacks, and long-term effects are the inability and instability of perception and mood.